Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual Vision, Operations, and Enrollment Town Hall. I'm Joanne Brazington, your host and moderator. This event is supported by the Offices of Marketing and Communications and Information Technology Services, with special thanks to Martin Agner and Kay Foster for their technical expertise. Joining me are panelists Dr. Nayef Samhat, President, Dr. Tim Schmitz, Interim Provost, Roberta Hurley, currently Vice President of Campus Life and Student Development and Dean of Students, who will soon be Senior Vice President for Administration and Secretary to the Board, Chris Gardner, Chief Financial Officer, Bran Stilley, Vice President for Enrollment, David Beecham, Senior Vice President for Administration for the next few weeks. Then I think we can find him on the golf course or in a beach chair at Pawleys Island. He promises to pick up the phone if I call. Dr. Dwayne Pruitt, Chief Equity Officer, Calhoun Kennedy, Vice President for Advancement, and Dr. Sandra Rouse, who will join us starting on July 18th as the college's new Vice President for Campus Life and Student Development and Dean of Students. This webinar will last no more than an hour. If you cannot stay for the event, we will post a recording online. We have gotten a number of questions. Some will be answered during brief presentations. Others will be posed at the end. The chat is closed during this event, but the Q&A feature will remain open. We will do our best to answer your questions. If we don't get to all of them, I'll send you an email with the answer. Let's begin with remarks from President Samhat.
I saw that. There we go. Not an auspicious start. Okay. Thank you, Joanne. And thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon. And a special welcome to Dr. Rouse, Sandra Rouse, who's joining us soon as VP for Campus Life and Student Development. As Joanne noted, we have gotten requests from alumni and others to talk about how enrollment affects our operations and to discuss the state of the college. You'll hear from Chris about how enrollment is critical to our operations and the viability of the institution. And I'm happy to say enrollment is strong. Brand will discuss more about that and provide some details on the incoming class. And as a result, our operations overall at the institution are strong and have been. And we have been fortunate that we received an extraordinary and historic gift, not only for Wofford, but among liberal arts colleges in the United States from Jerry Richardson. That $150 million gift gives us a means to distinguish ourselves further. As many of you know already, it is primarily for need-based scholarships, but touches student experiences. It has helped us increase our base wage to $15 an hour on campus, and will support some of the facilities on campus. And Chris Gardner, our CFO, will talk a little bit about how that impacts our operations shortly. It's important to note that gift will feather into the operations over 5 years. So it will be a while before we feel the full effect of that extraordinary gift and the growing endowment. One thing I'd like to share with you, though, is a 5-year plan, which we accomplished a year ahead of schedule. We've been asked about how that plan was funded, and it was funded in a couple of ways. First, we highlighted the need to grow the college only slightly to maintain growth on our footprint, existing footprint, rather than expand the property of the college, and to utilize to the best of our ability existing structures. That number ended up to be about 125 students growth and enrollment over, the plan was for 5 years, but we actually hit it 2 years ago. And we were going to add a couple of sports athletic programs, but we've added only one, which is women's softball. So we're delighted with that. Our enrollment is at 1,800 students as we open the fall. And again, Bran will speak more to that. But the 5-year plan emphasized opportunities to do several things. It was one, again, to grow the college's enrollment to 1,800, and we have been very successful in that. The second thing was to secure a $15 million gift to fund a residence hall, and that would serve 150 incoming first-year students. And we have, of course, the Jerome Johnson Richardson Hall, which is located where Andrews Fieldhouse was located. That hall also allowed us to replace locker room facilities for baseball and add one for softball, and replace the golf room as well. We have begun recruiting for a women's softball team, which was not only intended to help us realize that enrollment goal over time, but also it was an important part of complying with Title IX, gender equity in athletics. Today's an historic day for Title IX, by the way. But and to demonstrate an ongoing commitment to gender equity in our athletic program. So we've focused on softball as the new sport. And we're building right now a beautiful softball field, which should be done later this summer. In addition, we were working with our dining partners, AVI from Ohio, to secure funding to renovate Burwell Dining Hall. That $11 million renovation was completed, and we opened it in January of 2022. It is a spectacular facility, nearly doubling seating capacity, expanding meeting rooms, and a beautiful entryway to campus. Finally, well, not finally, we had several other things, but we wanted to renovate the Campus Life building. Several years ago, when the Jerry Richardson Indoor Stadium was built, we converted Ben Johnson Arena to a fitness center, and the rest of Campus Life building needed work. We renovated Tony White Theater, the game room, Macmillan Theater, Zach's, as well as the lobby of the Campus Life building due to a generous gift from Steve and Maria Mungo. It is a modern, bright facility, and I think students are enjoying it very much. And of course, the last thing we did, which was tied to that increase in enrollment, was to issue $25 million in bonds and continue fundraising for campus projects and student need-based scholarships. But that $25 million in bonds was intended to finish off some projects. We renovated the Sandra Tessler Library. Marsh Hall is undergoing the final phase of a renovation this year. The Black Science Annex was raised, and we put in its place, with a lead gift from Harold and Dolores Chandler, the Chandler Center for Environmental Studies. We were looking around on our campus to build a track and field facility, but there is no room on our campus for a track and field facility. So we entered into a long-term agreement with District 7. They had recently renovated their track and field facility, and our lease that we have with them it's a 10-year lease. It allows us to brand that track and field facility with Wofford symbols and logos, and we also have access to several grass fields immediately adjacent. So it's really a terrific opportunity for the college to have additional recreational and athletic space. The other thing we did on our campus here was to replace the intramural field, grass field, with a turf field. So really, between the turf field on our campus here and a turf field with District 7, we have 2 turf fields available for use for our students and our athletic programs. So that's very exciting. Again, the key here was the 125 increase enrollment of students and the gift of the residence hall, which allowed us to use all of that $25 million debt issuance for these various upgrades and renovations. On campus today, we're finishing Marsh Hall. We have received a gift for the Wellness Center, and that Wellness Center is undergoing a comprehensive renovation. We're renovating Snyder Field, the Snyder Field area, soccer field, with a new fence, a running track for students, a new grandstand. As well, we're finishing or repaving some of our roads. Cummings Street and Evans Street have been a little rocky and bumpy for years. By the time we start the fall term, they will be repaved, and we're replacing sidewalks as well. So there's a lot happening on campus. It's very exciting, and I'm delighted to say that we finished that 5-year plan in 4 years. So it's a testament to the hard work of everyone on campus that we find ourselves in this position. The one more point I'd like to make, a question was raised, I think today, about compensation study. We have been talking to several firms about a compensation study, and we're going to select one of these firms in the next couple of weeks or so. They have different timelines, but we want to have the right process in place. They'll guide us in shaping the right process and work with us as a campus community in terms of the philosophy of compensation, and importantly, identify the correct peers against which to measure ourselves and compare ourselves as we conduct the study for both faculty and staff. And we expect that process to last through the fall semester. Hopeful that we will have a plan to present to the board sometime early after the new year. So I want to thank everyone. I think the college is in a very strong position. I appreciate all the faculty, staff, and alumni engagement and participation and all that we're doing here on campus. Always happy to answer questions. And I know we may have some time, but before then, let me turn it over to Brand for an enrollment report.
Thank you very much, Nayef. We're excited about the class who will join us soon in late August. And we had a record year in enrollment by many measures this year. We had a record number of applications. 4,425 students applied this year. That was an increase of 2% over last year. And this is the 9th year in a row that we've had an increase in applications. And so that's an exciting trend. And I think that's been a real key to our success over that span of time. We accepted 2,661 students who applied. That was 60% of our applicant pool. The accept rate increased slightly from last year. And that was because last year we were slightly below the number of new students that we had targeted. Currently, we have 510 deposits or commitments from new students who plan to join us in late August. In addition, there are 17 transfer students who have paid deposits to join us. We don't expect the deposits for new students to increase, but we do expect a few more transfer deposits over the course of the summer. And so in the next slide, just a little more detail about the new students who plan to join us, the first-year students. 47% of them are male, and the student body at Wofford overall is 52% female. And so this won't change things much in the student body overall. We have 236 students from out of state, which is 47%. Our goal in our latest enrollment plan, which is to complete in 2026, is to have 50% of our new students from out of state. And then the most disappointing part of our results for our new class are the number of students from underrepresented populations. This would be all students who are non-white, and this would include international students. Last year, we had a record percentage at 24%, And so we did not achieve the results that we had hoped for there. We're working on a survey of students who were accepted to Wofford, who would be from underrepresented populations. We've already gotten some responses. We're looking at ways to improve this number in the future. And we think that the Richardson gift and the new dollars for need-based financial aid will be a tremendous benefit to helping us improve this number in the future. The academic preparation of this class is very strong. We recalculate every student's GPA when they apply based only on their academic coursework. The average high school GPA of students who enroll at Wofford is over a 4.0, but the recalculated GPA, and this includes all grades through the end of the junior year, is currently 3.69. We're in the process of recalculating all students' GPAs and including their senior year coursework. And we expect that this GPA will improve anywhere from, it'll be close to 3.8 by the time we finish recalculating those senior grades. And so we always see improvement when we include the senior grades. You see the mid 50% of SAT and ACT scores. 55% of our students submitted scores this year as a part of their application. And so 45% did not submit scores. We collect scores from all students who took SAT or ACT over the summer, so we can continue to see how effectively these standardized tests predict performance in the future. And so prior to COVID, that percentage of students who did not submit scores was closer to 25%. And so it's increased significantly since COVID. But strong quality in terms of academic credentials for this entering class. And then finally, there's good news on the retention front as well. You see that 79 students who were enrolled at Wofford in the fall of 2021 have withdrawn. Last year, that number at this time was 95, and those numbers include first-year students. Currently, 36 first-year students have withdrawn. Last year at this time, that number was 39. And we also collect deposits from returning students. And so we've seen a significant increase in deposits from returning students as well. And so where we sit today, we think retention is going to be strong by the time we start school in the fall. And so the news is good from enrollment. As I said, we're excited about this first year class. And as I like to say, I think our enrollment results are a reflection on the entire community. And there are certainly lots of things going well at Wofford today, and enrollment certainly sees the benefit of all that good work from many of you, from alumni who recommend students, from faculty and staff who help us recruit, from our student ambassadors. And so there's a long list of people to thank for these results. But that's my report on enrollment, and I'll look forward to any questions at the end if there are more questions about enrollment. And I think next is Chris Gardner, our CFO, with a financial overview.
Yes, thanks, Brent.
Hold up just a second, Chris. I think President Samhat wanted to make a quick comment.
A quick comment. One thing I wanted to mention and it fits with the enrollment that Brian has described, our increasing enrollment. Over the course of these several years, we have actually added as many as 7 additional lines to the faculty to help support the enrollment growth. So that's an important variable to ensure that our student faculty ratio remains right around 10.5 to 11:1 students on campus. And these appointments have been across all divisions of the institution. So although we have grown slightly by about 125 students, we have made a significant addition to the size of our faculty. Sorry about that. I think that's an important point to make.
No, that's great. Okay. Chris Gardner, our Chief Financial Officer, will do the next presentation.
Thanks, Joanne. And obviously, we've got a pretty broad cross-section of the Wofford community represented on this town hall today. And so over the next few minutes, I'm just going to try to give a brief synopsis of the college's finances, kind of where our money comes from and where it goes. And so, the first thing, like I said, we'll talk a little bit about where our money comes from, the types of revenue that the college generates, and then where our money goes, the types of expenses that we incur in order to operate the college. And then just a couple high-level points that I think are important to understand when you think about the college's finance and operations. And so as we move into revenues, there are a couple different types of revenue that the college generates and a few different ways to think about that revenue. And so you can break down our total revenue, which is in the sort of $80 to $85 million range typically, between operating and non-operating revenue. And so in operating revenue, those are exactly what it sounds like. Those are the ongoing operations of the college, the ways that we generate revenue through those operations. So the vast majority of that comes from comprehensive fees, as we'll see. You have the endowment that supports our ongoing operations. You have annual giving, and then the revenues that we generate from some of our auxiliary enterprises. Examples of those include residence halls and student housing, but also athletic events, theater events, and the like. And then we have what we would call our non-operating revenue. These are sort of non-recurring gifts. You can get government grants to support specific programs or activities. Of course, we'll talk about the endowment a little bit more. Also gifts to fund physical plant projects or other types of specific programs or projects that a donor is interested in funding. And so we have a little less control and a little less predictability in some of our non-operating revenues. Another way that we think about our revenue or break it down is in terms of restrictions. So donors, and as we generate revenue, we have the ability to generate unrestricted revenue. And frankly, most of our operating revenue is of the unrestricted type. Anything we generate through sort of the ongoing operations of the college is unrestricted. The only way revenue can be restricted is if it's revenue that we earn from donors, so contributions and other gifts or federal contributions. Those are the only types of restricted revenues. That's the only way to get a restriction on revenue, is if it comes initially from a donor on the front end. And so, our endowment gifts typically have some level of restriction to them. Certainly, if we get gifts to support the physical plant of the college, there's usually a specific purpose attached to those gifts. And then again, you may have gifts for specific programs or operations of the college that have to be used for a very designated purpose that the donor has identified. And so that restricts our ability. We still generally find ways to use those gifts, but they're not unrestricted gifts like we typically generate. And of course, the one exception to that is then our annual fund, or the Wofford Fund and the Terrier Club. Those are more unrestricted in their nature. They're restricted. You can make designations within those areas, but they tend to be used in the year that we receive them. Whereas restricted gifts sometimes are used in a year after we receive them, or maybe even several years down the road, depending on the nature of the gift. And so if we think about that, we tend to, as a college, we manage to what we call to our operating budget. And so our operating budget includes, as you might expect, all of our operating revenues and expense, but it doesn't include the non-operating revenues and then occasionally the expenses associated with those revenues, because they're less predictable, because they tend to be chunky, and because we can't rely on them as we plan multiple years in advance. And so, our operating revenues are the ones that we can steward, that we can plan for, that we can make sure that we're using as efficiently, as effectively as possible. But the operating budget does contain, as I mentioned, about 88% of our revenues, close to 90% of our revenues, and even a greater percentage of our expenses are included in the operating budget. So virtually all of the academic and administrative program is included in our operating budget. There are a limited number of sort of curricular or co-curricular courses that are funded by specific gifts or specific foundations or grants that aren't included, but this is the vast majority of the college when we look at the operating budget. And so when we kind of break that apart, we can look at the revenues of the college. And as I mentioned, about $76 million in operating revenues for the college. This is for Our projection for fiscal 22, we're looking at about 60%, a little less than 60% of our revenue comes from net tuition and fees, another 16% from our room and board revenue. So 75% of our total operating budget is derived from net comprehensive fee revenue from students. And so we're very much a student dependent institution, and we will continue to be. Then the next largest source of revenue for us is the endowment spend. Right now, that's about 13% of our total revenue. As we all know, we're incredibly thankful and fortunate to have received a gift from Mr. Richardson of $150 million that's gone into our endowment. We use a spending rule. We take the 20-quarter rolling average of our endowment value, and then we apply a 5% spending rate to most of that. And that is how we calculate our endowment spending that gets released. And so when you get a gift in a given fiscal year, because we use a rolling average period of 20 quarters, it takes about 5 years before that gift is fully realized in the college's annual operations and in our budget. So as Mr. Richardson's gift kind of works its way through that calculation, we will see the endowment spending number rise as a percentage of operations, although maybe to the 18 to 19% range. Will still be probably fairly student dependent. You can see that annual giving makes up a 6% portion of the college's budget, and then you have athletics, summer school, and various other revenue sources that altogether are also about 6% of the total operating revenues of the college. Obviously, if we just have revenues, the revenues exist to support the operations of the college, to support the student experience. But there's really a couple ways that we look at and think about our expenses. And so the first way I'm going to share with you is what we call the natural expense classification. This is what is the money used for? What does it go out to pay for? And so you can see that 60% of our total operating expenses are for personnel related costs. That makes sense. We are a people-oriented, high-touch institution. And so most of our spending is dedicated to supporting those people that provide the incredible experiences for our students. In addition to that, then we pay for food service costs to provide the dining experience that we do on campus. We have about 5% of our expenses are designated to cover debt service at the college. Certainly a very manageable level as we look at our peer institutions. Utilities cost is a cost that we have some control over, but makes about 4.5%. And then our replacement and renewal is what we call our sort of our capital maintenance and capital spending to maintain and improve the physical plant of the campus. That's the operating budget allocation. Of course, we also raise funds to support that as well. And then finally, we have what I would call our discretionary spending piece. That's the operating dollars, the funding we can control and change easily from year to year. Obviously, personnel costs are a little bit more difficult to change from year to year. And so the discretionary spending piece is about 20% of our total operating budget. The other way to think about expenses at the college is to think about it in terms of what is the purpose of our spending. We call that the functional classification of expenses. And so as we shift to the next slide, we'll see the functional classifications of expenses at the college. And so number one, the largest area where we spend our money is in instruction at about 29%, and then another 10% for sort of the direct academic support that underlies that instructional infrastructure. So about really 39% is focused exclusively on academics and the academic experience for students. Then you'll see another 28% of our budget is dedicated to student services. So those are the co-curricular and the extracurricular activities that go on our campus that contribute to the type of experience we try to create at Wofford, right? It's an all-encompassing experience. It's not just go to class and go home. It's really embedded in the life of the campus. And then you'll see replacement. I made a little mistake on my bullet points, so my apologies. But auxiliary enterprises are sort of the food service and the other areas that support that. So residence halls, again, all of the things that kind of go on behind the scenes to make the college run. That's actually about 12%, I think, when you put all those numbers together. And then general administrative, which is not listed here, and my apologies for that. Also, I think 11% of the college is in general and administrative. And so that is the smallest piece of our of the pie, generally speaking. And that's important to us to try to be efficient and to try to focus our expenditures in the areas that impact the student experience as much as possible. So when we kind of put all of this together, there are a few takeaways, some of which I've already kind of telegraphed, but Wofford is and probably always will be a tuition and student dependent institution. Right now, 75% of our operating budget comes from net comprehensive fee revenue. As I said, endowment gifts certainly will help that. And we hope that that will continue to grow the share as a share of the total operating budget over time. But we are student dependent, and student revenues are the most important element of our financial health and success. As I mentioned before, we're labor intensive. We're a high touch experience for our students. And so that comes with needing to support those, to provide the level of staffing, the level of faculty that enable that type of experience for our students. And so about 60% of our expenses are focused on that. Because we are student oriented, about 85% of our total expenses, when you look at all of the expenses across the board, go straight into the student experience, whether that's instruction, co-curriculum, or extracurricular activities. That's all about 85% of our budget is dedicated in those areas that support the student experience. And the other point to make on that is when you put those numbers together, we generate a little over $56 million in student revenues. That's actually less than the $62 million it costs to deliver the student experience and the education that we provide. And so the balance, the difference between those numbers is funded from the endowment and the annual giving and other sources. And so we are dependent, to the extent the endowment grows, we are dependent on the endowment. We are dependent on annual giving and other support from donors to be able to deliver the type of experience we intend to deliver at Wofford. And so that's a really important, when I look at and when I think about the college, it's really important to value the contributions that help sustain the experience that we're trying to deliver to our students. So I think that's about all of my prepared remarks.
Okay, now it's time for questions. We have received a good number. The first question is for President Samhat. Dr. Samhat, could you discuss Wofford's expansion across Church Street into the North Side neighborhood? Where are we now, and do we have plans to expand further?
Sure. Let me first say thanks to those who help with annual giving and help build our endowment. As Chris noted, it fills a vitally important need in terms of serving our students. And I would just describe what we do. So I'm running off on a tangent here, Joanne, but it's related. I'd like to talk about the college and its operations. We're an educational institution, but we are filled with different kinds of operations: an athletic program, a recreational program, a health program, a travel program, a restaurant program, housing and apartment program, as well as landscaping program and building program. So all of these different areas, IT is another one. And entertainment complex as well. And we educate students in the classroom. So what Chris has described in terms of the distribution of expenses to support the student experience reflects the complexity. I hope you've seen it reflects the complexity of a small college and how small colleges and large educational institutions operate. Okay, to the question. On the north side, I guess it was about 6 years ago or so, we received a fabulous gift from the Romill Foundation for Sustainability. And that gift was designed to enhance the college's efforts in sustainability, both in terms of the environment and the community. We have the Goodall Environmental Center in Glendale, a spectacular and beautiful location and fabulous facility. And that center was enhanced with this gift, and our commitment to the Glendale community was strengthened by building or renovating a house nearby, purchasing it, and it's connected to our Goodall Center there. And a big chunk of that gift as well was intended to support community sustainability across Church Street, the north side. Fundamental to that was the Milliken House, a living learning community, residential community, which is part of a larger residential complex across from VCOM in the north side. Just a couple blocks down from the entrance of campus. We have 12 students there. They have a specialized curriculum built around community-based service and community-based engagement and learning and research. We opened that house a couple years ago. Of course, 1 year it was used for COVID, but we used it last year as a living learning facility so our students can work in the community. In addition, there used to be an old auto garage right across the street on the corner from the college, and the college purchased that property and then entered into an arrangement with the Second Presbyterian Church with the house right adjacent to that property, which we renovated and have moved our Office of Marketing Communications into, and we have landscaped the old auto garage property. So that enhances the entrance to the north side as well as to our own campus. And finally, the college is participated in the purchase of the old motel, Sunshine Motel, across the street with the north side Spartanburg Regional Medical Center in the city. That was torn down. It is now being developed as a nice shopping complex, and we will move our bookstore as the lead anchor, nearly doubling our bookstore space into that retail center. And it is it's going to be a fabulous new bookstore, expanded goods, a little coffee bar there, and there's a fire pit on the back side of it, so for students to gather. We have invested several $1 million in the north side, and it's part of a larger transformation of the north side neighborhood. And that's very important because a thriving community around our college enhances our college and makes us stronger. And we want to partner with our community, both in the north side and downtown, to continue what is really transformational growth in Spartanburg.
Thank you. Our next question is for Provost Schmitz. Dr. Schmitz, talk about some of the curricular or programmatic changes that happened during the 5-year plan. What type of curricular changes is the college considering now, or are they considering now?
I think the first thing I would say is that it was important to all of us as we embarked on this path to make sure that we continue to offer the same high-level education that we've always offered our students, even when we had the 1,100 students when I started at Wofford 23 years ago. And so, we continue to hire top-notch faculty. Most recently, we hired novelist Sherry Reynolds. I think the announcement just went out today as our new Cobb Chair of the Humanities, which we're all very excited about. And so I think mostly with regard to curriculum, which of course is a faculty-driven endeavor anyway, this is something that we continue to adapt and adjust to. One thing I'm particularly excited about is our new education minor, which has been in the works for a while. And already, according to the education program, there's a great deal of interest and excitement behind that. That's a singular piece that I think really will help us flesh out, particularly the kind of work we want to do in the community and other things going forward. The other two things I might talk about with regard to curriculum are sort of evergreen. One of them is, of course, considering our general education curriculum, which is something that we embarked upon actually before the beginning of the 5-year plan. But interestingly enough, we are just about to make, I think, a real significant change to it this fall for our first-year students, moving from Humanities 101 to a new, more defined first-year seminar. We've also developed science and context courses, are contemplating senior culminating experiences. And, we had a social science requirement that we also added a couple of years ago. Those have all been just in the recent past. And then, of course, the second evergreen thing, I think this is the fourth such conversation I've been part of in the time I've been at Wofford, but a look at our interim program, our January interim. This one, though, is, I hope, different from the others. And we have had some money left over from a Mellon grant to really begin to examine interim this summer with a group of faculty, working with our interim coordinator and one of our associate provosts, to meet with interest groups, faculty, staff, students, to talk about interim, what it can be, to consider some alternate models. One of the things that happened because of COVID was a switch to holding interim in the spring, which was something that was popular enough with students that we have a campus union resolution asking to make that permanent. One of the other features of interim is sort of what it does and what its purpose is, and it's changed a lot over the last 50 years. And so part of what this group in the summer is looking at is what the actual mission of interim is and what it should be. So this reconsideration will move into the fall, and we'll have further conversations and see what comes of it. In terms of things beyond or alongside, I should say, the curriculum, we are looking at new ways to think about academic advising, adding new students and new faculty, creating new opportunities for faculty with sabbaticals and other things complicates our advising model. And so imagining new ways that we might consider academic advising is something that is in the future or in the near future for us. Beyond that, though, we've created, as I mentioned, more opportunities for faculty. There is about 40% more money available each year for faculty research in the summer. So just the ability for faculty to engage in their scholarly work in the summer, funding that, being more deliberate about that, is a huge change for us and a real step forward. And then we've also put a lot more money into student faculty collaborative research. That is something that has been expanding. I think there are 15 faculty this summer with 34 students participating. There are other kinds of research opportunities going on this summer as well. So these are big changes, and we expect to see even more support for this kind of work going forward. And then finally, the Experience Wofford idea that we have, this notion of using money support from the large gift that President Samhat mentioned to begin to think about new opportunities for students beyond the gates of Wofford. Internship opportunities, community-based learning opportunities, study abroad opportunities, and doing that with an eye toward student equity, making sure that all students can take advantage of these opportunities if they want to, that there aren't barriers that some have expressed concern about and did exist, in barring access to some of these activities for students. I think I'll leave it there.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Schmitz. Dean Hurley, this next question is addressed to you. So if there are the most students coming into the class of 2026 than ever before, what does this mean for housing?
This means that everyone is going to have a roommate, and they're going to love their roommate. We have, don't tell Brian, but we have a couple of beds left for first-year students. And we have, according to Dean Lawless's report today, about a dozen beds left for upperclassmen or transfer students. And so it is with the completion of the renovation of Marsh Hall, all 7 of our residence halls are going to be in outstanding condition. And we can't thank Mr. Richardson enough for his gift of Richardson Hall. It, as President Samhat noted, it's not just a residence hall, but an athletic facility, and it is phenomenal. Mr. Richardson was able to come last August and meet some of the students moving into the building, And that was a thrill for both him and the students. And it continues to be kept in great condition. And the students who get to live there enjoy it. And we even saw commuting students using the lobby of the residence hall this year to study in between classes. So it's working well on all levels.
Thank you. This question also gives us a good opportunity to give Dr. Sandra Rouse, the college's new Vice President for Campus Life and Student Development and Dean of Students, a chance to say hello and introduce herself to the Wofford community. Dr. Rouse, would you mind?
Not at all. Hello, I'm excited to be joining Wofford in a few weeks. I'm a South Carolinian, born in Barnwell, South Carolina, and love my home state. And I have enjoyed a great career in higher education and student life over the last 24 years. And I'm looking forward to contributing to Wofford's continued success. So I've already gotten a warm welcome at this point, and I'm looking forward to coming in a few weeks and joining the family.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse and Dean Hurley. The next question is about finances. So I will ask Chief Financial Officer Chris Gardner to address. With Richardson money flowing into the college and this helping with operational costs, why is tuition increasing?
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. We touched on that a little bit during the presentation, but a couple points on tuition generally and the Richardson endowment gift specifically. So first of all, when we think about tuition, we are a not-for-profit and we want to deliver an experience. And so the first thing we need to think about when we try to identify tuition is to make sure that we're covering the costs that the college incurs. And so like any other organization operating in pretty much anywhere in the globe today, are facing rising costs. And so with 60% of our costs being in personnel related costs, our people are experiencing rising costs. And so we've got to think about ways that we can support our people as best we can in that type of environment. So that's number one. Number two is, of course, we look at what the marketplace looks like, what our peer schools look like. And in that regard, we think we're very competitive in terms of our price. And so we always take that into account when we determine what we think is an appropriate price for the college. And then, as it affects the endowment, as I mentioned, it's going to take time for Mr. Richardson's money to flow into the college's operations. That will happen over a period of the next 4 years or so. We're starting to see that already. And then the other element of the endowment, and even Mr. Richardson's gift, right, is their endowment gifts generally are restricted for specific purposes. Much of Mr. Richardson's gift is restricted for scholarships, student scholarships, to increase access for those students that most need that type of access to a Wofford education. Or buildings on the college's campus, student experiences, and of course to bring our base wage to $15 an hour. We're incredibly appreciative for all of those things, but we have many other costs on campus that are rising that aren't being supported specifically by that gift. And so it will continue to be, it continues to be important that we support our people, support the experience that students have, and that does drive, we are, by definition, as I mentioned, a high-touch institution. We are a niche product, and we want to make sure that we're delivering on the experience. And so we invest in the college every year.
Thank you. That was a good explanation. Dr. Pruitt, this next question is for you as our Chief Equity Officer. So what has happened to JEDI? And what was the result of the board's history, memory, and commemoration naming policy discussion?
Just very quickly, what's happened with JEDI is the Office for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion was created in September. The office combines the function of the Chief Equity Officer and Title IX. And one of the things that we are committed to as an office is not only addressing the issues of Wofford's history and commemoration that were foundational to the JEDI report, we're also very much interested in approaching 12 other recommendations as an attempt to engage with things that are the most significant for this entire student population. We are concerned with faculty and staff diversity initiatives, initiatives to support student diversity and equity, and also we're interested in accessibility and wellness services. Because I do want to underscore for everyone in attendance that part of what we are attempting to do is to define diversity, equity, and inclusion as broadly as possible, and to bring as many persons into that consideration as possible to make sure that all members of our community are received warmly and take advantage of all the opportunities that Wofford College presents. We are currently working on, again, 12 of the recommendations in the JEDI report. We are working on a gender climate study so that we can respond to any perceived issues that we have about the experience of persons who are about gender as a part of our community. And we're also trying to do more outreach in the Spartanburg community, just to, again, to make Wofford a good faith partner with our friends in the city of Spartanburg. As for the recommendation about space naming, at the May meeting of the board did review a policy proposed by an ad hoc committee. Additional work is being done on that, and we anticipate that a final policy will be approved at the board's August retreat.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt. I love this next question because it means we have another member of the Terrier family soon. The question is for Vice President of Enrollment, Brand Stilley. Should my daughter apply early decision to get the best financial aid or regular decision? How does the college parcel out aid?
Thanks for that question. And I'm excited that your daughter is considering early decision. And we try to simplify the process by which students are considered for merit-based financial aid. And every applicant to Wofford is considered for merit-based aid. And then students can be considered for need-based aid by submitting the free application for federal student aid, which is the most widely used financial aid form. But we treat students the same regardless of when they apply in terms of their financial aid. But students who apply early decision have a higher acceptance rate. Students who apply early action have the next highest acceptance rate, and then students who apply regular decision have the lowest acceptance rate. And so that's the biggest difference in the different rounds of application is the acceptance rates, not the financial aid. And so we'd be happy to talk with a student. One of the biggest disadvantages of applying early decision is you commit when you submit your application without knowing exactly what kind of financial aid might be available. We're happy to talk with students about those opportunities prior to them making application. And so we'd be happy to hear from you to talk more about that, to help you pick the application option best suited for you.
Okay, next question is about student success. This is also the last pre-submitted question that we have, and we're going to run out of time, but we're going to go ahead and get to it anyway. It's something that's everyone's job at Wofford, so several members of the leadership team will provide answers. Let's start with Dr. Tim Schmitz. So what does student success look like at Wofford? What are some of the ways that the college supports students? Dr. Schmitz.
Well, I think it's part of what makes Wofford special in the first place, right? The idea that they come to Wofford and they're able to connect with faculty, that the sense of community is here, that there's this sort of generalized support for them. And certainly, academic advising, faculty mentoring has always been a part of what has made Wofford special. It's also a lot different. I didn't go to Wofford, but I imagine it's a lot different from the way it was 30 years ago when I was a college student, and I visited my academic advisor and occasionally went to office hours, and that was it. Now, it's a lot different. It's far more robust. There is what we call a student success team for each student that includes a faculty advisor, a staff liaison, a peer mentor, and also what we call a personal librarian. Now, that doesn't mean we have 500 librarians on campus, but it does mean that there is a target librarian that students can go to for questions about research or other sorts of library and even some class-related needs. Beyond that, though, we have support mechanisms on campus for all sorts of other co-curricular and extracurricular activities that students might want to do. We have the Center for Community-Based Learning, which is staffed and ready to meet with students. We have the Office of International Programs. We have the Career Center. All of these are staffed with people just waiting to meet with students and help them sort of achieve their goals at Wofford and beyond. And beyond that, we have the Office of Student Success. Dr. Boyce Lawton is our Dean of Student Success. He runs a Gateway Scholars Program for first-generation students. But beyond that, that office does a really good job of trying to identify which students might be at risk for not completing their Wofford education. And it does a remarkable job of identifying and addressing what might be seen as small things that might be barriers to students finishing their degrees or getting behind. An example is if you're a student without resources, a broken laptop might require you to get your laptop fixed, and you might not have a computer to work on. That might cause you to turn papers in later, do something else. Dr. Lawton and his office have created a laptop loaner program to address that particular kind of issue. So our Office of Student Success is working very hard to identify issues big and small that might be impediments to our students making it through the college. Roberta, you want to step in next?
Sure, thank you, Tim. And campus life and student development, like academic support services, are there to help students be successful. From everything we do in the Wellness Center and residence life and campus safety and student activities. And so we are looking, our philosophy is to build the whole, help students become holistic people. And that involves all the dimensions of their life. They're living on campus. There's a social dimension, there's spiritual dimension, their intellectual dimension. And so we've built a tremendous program. We started a class deans program this year for specific programming targeted to first, second, third year students and our seniors. And that's off to a great start. We have software that's called Starfish that faculty and staff use to let the behavioral intervention team know of students who might need intervention to be successful. And so I just wanted the alums on this call to know that when you're not here every day, there's so many programs that we have enhanced over the last years since, and that lead to student success and help students be successful and help them graduate, as Nayef always says, in 4 years, not 5.
Very good. Calhoun Kennedy, who is our Vice President for Advancement, I think he would be a good person to talk about some of the things alumni in his area also does to enhance the student experience and student success.
Thank you, Joanne. The best way, or actually a few ways, but one way is I'll standard through the Wofford Fund. You have the opportunity to designate it for scholarships, faculty staff development, but also student experiences. One of our main focuses, the past few months and into the future, is expanding the opportunities for student experiences, and that's internships, study abroad opportunities, undergraduate research primarily. Those are 3 main areas we focused on. We were successful in having some matching funds to create endowed funds to allow folks to specify for study abroad, internships, undergraduate research. So, that's the endowment side. And we also have, like I said, in the Wofford Fund, where you can designate money for student experiences, which can be used where the needs most needed. So those are 2 primary ways that alumni can help with the student experience and student success. Part of that also is the One Wofford Fund. That is something we created several years ago, which when students are forced with decisions that are circumstances out of their control that might cause them to drop out or something, then we can work with financial aid and Boyce Lawton, so ensure those students remain on campus and graduate on time. And ultimately, that's the Vegas student success, is graduating in 4 years. And so we have some programs and ways that alumni and friends and parents can help to ensure the overall health and well-being of the student population here.
Thank you, Calhoun. I'm sorry for that glitch, everybody. Not sure what happened, but unfortunately, that's all of the time we have for questions. Thank you for participating, and thank you to our panelists and to all of the people behind the scenes who have made this event possible. Remember, you can find a recording of this event at wofford.edu/coronavirus. That's where we're saving them all for now. Hopefully, we won't always have that website. We will also include a link to the recording in the next issue of the Conquer and Prevail e-newsletter. If you have questions, or if you have a question that wasn't answered or one coming up, email woffordnews@wofford.edu and we will respond with the answer. This concludes our virtual town hall. Thank you and stay well, Terriers.
Thank you very much.